All right, so my slides are already there, so I don't need to introduce myself all that much with that. But I'm an economist. My name is Nicolas Duran. I'm an economist at UCL. UCL, for context, is University College London. Typically, where I present, I don't need to say this, but here I think it's important. I come from London, and I'm going to talk about ventilation. And like resilience, we have heard ventilation quite a bit today. And I'm going to talk about ventilation in classrooms, which we also heard quite a bit. But we also heard about concepts and what happens and what is important to do. But we haven't seen any numbers. And I'm an economist, and I really can't help myself. And so I'm going to just put some numbers into it. And these numbers come really from a study that we've been conducting for a few years already with people that you already know quite well. Niels, for example, Pete, Juan. So these are my co-authors. And I'm going to show you what is coming out of this study that is still going on. And to begin with, I'm going to put out there a very, I would say, controversial statement. And that is that primary education is very, very, very important. Of course, that's a joke. It's fundamental. It shapes your life. It shapes how you're going to deal with your life later on, how better you're going to learn at other stages of your education, not just primary school. Yeah? And how we know how pupils or how students are learning, it's really through tests. We test them regularly, and we understand how much they're learning, how well they're applying those learnings. But in the Netherlands, those tests, those primary school tests, are really, really defining. And I say this because given the tests or given the scores that you have obtained in those tests as a primary school child, that is going to determine what advice the teacher is going to give for which type of high school you're going to attend. And the type of high school you're going to attend is going to determine whether you're going to be able to go to a research university or not. So whether you're going to be able to obtain a master's or a doctorate, for example. Of course, it's a bit more nuanced than this, but for the sake of simplicity, let's keep it there. And whether you are able to obtain a master or a doctorate, it's going to determine how much you're going to earn in your adult life. And you can earn as much as twice more of those who didn't finish high school, or even 50% of those who just have a bachelor. So it is very, very important whether how well you do in these tests, at least in the context of the Netherlands. I'm going to tell you a second fact, a second statement, and one that probably you don't know, and this is because it comes directly from the measurements that we did. And that is, in terms of ventilation, there is such thing as good and bad classrooms. I don't know about in terms of whether they foster creativity or not and other things, but I know that in terms of ventilation, there is such thing as good and bad classrooms. That is, there are some bad classrooms, that's the solid line, that during a typical school day from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., they will oscillate, the concentration of CO2 will oscillate between 1,500 and 2,500 ppm. Yeah? There are good classrooms that the oscillation goes around 1,000. So now you put these two things together, and obviously it begs the question, does ventilation affect the learning of the children? So can we do something about it? Can we do something about the future of these children by investing in ventilation? To answer this, my colleagues, I wasn't there at the time, but later on I jumped into the project. So Juan and Martijn, for example, they installed sensors in 27 schools of the Movare network in 230 classrooms, or even more, but we're measuring 230. Quite frequent, high-frequency rates. We measure how much CO2 there is. We also measure other variables like temperature, humidity, particles, noise, light, all sorts of things. And of course, we take the results of these exams, of these tests that the children take biannually across 3 academic years, and we relate it to variables, CO2 concentration to test while we control for other stuff. The answer to this question, of course, is it does matter, and it matters a lot. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here talking to you, most likely. And here are the results, or one set of results, something that I can very easily interpret. There's a lot more that we did in the paper, but at least this one I can tell you very easily what it means. And this is, during the time that the children are learning towards that test, if they have spent 3 or more days, that is full days, at 1,500 or more, remember those bad classrooms, they oscillated between 1,500 and 2,500. If they have spent at 1,500 or more ppm, they will do 10 to 20% worse in their upcoming exam than those that were less than 3 days exposed to this CO2 concentration. Now, we don't know if this is CO2, if this is some other aspect of the ventilation, but CO2 we use as a proxy for telling how bad ventilation is at the time the children are learning. Yeah? And 10 to 20% lower score in tests that will give you the chance to actually be able to obtain a master's or a doctorate or a higher education that will then lead to 50% or 100% more income is a life-changing decision or impact. Solutions, obviously, as usually, come with trade-offs, so we can increment ventilation to the maximum. Actually, this is what happened after COVID, but of course there are energy concerns. We can open windows to increase ventilation naturally, but that, of course, brings in outdoor pollution, which we know because of Juan's studies as well, that it really affects learning and cognition and health, obviously. And as we seal our buildings more and more, we also need to understand better how indoor sourced pollution affects health and productivity, that is VOCs, dust, mold, these different polluting sources. Now, lastly, what's next, or what I'm thinking of doing next, is looking at the combination of 2 things. Now is ventilation, but how about when the children already have some sort of health precondition, for example, obesity? So we are looking at relating body mass index and how ventilation mediates the effect of these on the test scores. So to give you a simple idea, just look at a good classroom or sort of good classroom with CO2 maximums of less than 2,000 and one that is really bad, and look at the relationship between BMI here and test scores here. So it's much, much worse when the concentration of CO2 is much higher. So this is the next step. And yeah, I hope it's exciting. Thank you very much.
Yeah, let's see. Yes.
The oxygen level is around 21%, and if you are in a classroom with 30 kids, then you burn all the oxygen. Have you ever investigated the volume of oxygen? Because that's what our body needs, basically.
No, we have not. We have not looked at oxygen. What we can do, we cannot tell precisely what's the level of oxygen. What we can say or assume is that the children have a certain metabolism rate and therefore will produce specific amount of CO2, and from there relate what the oxygen in ambience should be. But no, we haven't looked at it. No, it's a good suggestion.
Might be interesting.
Thank you. Whoa.
I'm better at throwing and catching. I actually have a question for the mayors here. I'll just stand up and. So if we look at this research, and we've had great research here today on the positive effect of a healthy building, and looking at the fantastic results for the Venlo Stadskantoor, but now we see that schools actually with bad air quality also have significantly negative effects on well, the future really of these kids. Just the test scores, and that means the future. So when you think about healthy buildings and you go beyond a stadskantoor, what's your vision? Sorry, Nico, to bypass you here, but what's your vision then to apply stadskantoor thinking to schools? And is there something that you'll be doing in Venlo and Mönchengladbach to also apply this to schools? I don't know, not to all, maybe somebody else.
Yes, I think we all have concepts how to modernize, for example, school buildings or how to build new school buildings. That's what we are currently doing. But I guess it's a very long-term task for us all because, for example, I think you told about the total amount what you have to invest in Krefeld in public buildings. I don't know the Sky Mönchengladbach, but I think it's the same number. And if you look how many buildings we modernize in a year or build new in a year, it's about what 1% or perhaps 2%. So if we act in these normal decades, we have to think about 50 years, 100 years before we have very change and total change. And so I think we have to be quicker. And of course, now, if we build a new building, we'll yes, we stick to the healthy building concept.
The city of Venlo is investing a lot in rebuilding the primary schools, but also COVID had changed the mindset. And COVID, of course, asked us to make the schools better, more oxygen and ventilate, etc., etc.
Yeah, this is all pre-COVID.
So
just to
yes,
clarify.
and you can connect it with healthy buildings and healthy buildings project. So I think it make it faster to change also the primary schools and perhaps also the high schools.
We try to give Krefeld specific rules for healthy building, what we learned from Venlo, and we implemented it in our school building system. So every school that is planned at the moment to be refurbished or to build new is built by healthy building regulations. And even the schools we've built in the last we built in the last years are influenced by healthy building thinking. It's not completely part of the. It was not completely part of the rules before, but it was in this mindset. It was planned in this mindset. So that I think it. The reason is that we have had in the last years a lot of investment in schools. This was in the last 7 years the main field of cities' investment in buildings, and in the last years it was a more healthy building investment in schools. So I think we are on a good way.
Very good. Yeah, I think. Thank you.
Good.
For the
Thank you.
presentation. And